So, what exactly is going on in the marketplace today? Stay tuned to find out. Well, we are back with NoteSchool TV, just like we are every single Wednesday at 11:05 Central Time. So thanks for joining us. Jump in the comment section, say hello, tell me where you're from. It's always good to hear from everybody who's participating in NoteSchool TV. The easiest way to participate, the easiest way to join us if you're brand new is simply by subscribing to the NoteSchool YouTube channel, and then go click that bell notification. And by doing that, you'll literally get an alert to your phone saying, hey, we're going live. We're going to be live in 30 minutes. And it allows you to jump on, say hello, engage with us a little bit, and ask your questions, right? Not just during the show. Definitely chime in so that we can kind of be addressing those. But we also hang around at the end for an after party. So join us for the after party at the very end of the show, where we kind of just are a little bit more casual and we hang out and kind of dive into some of these questions. If you're brand new to Notes and you're brand new to maybe even NoteSchool and you're trying to figure out what's next for you and kind of how do you get involved a little bit more, go to noteschool.com/TV. And that link will get you some more content, get you some more information to really help you better understand what your next step might be, right? And so we've got a great show. This is a very special episode, as we're going to be really diving into kind of a special market update to really bring some quality data across the screen to help you better understand, with some amazing reports that we're going to be giving away for absolutely free. But before we get into that, outside of just saying hello, in the comments, I'm seeing people from New Jersey and Kentucky and Illinois, and I see Brooklyn's in the house, all over the place. So it's really great to see everybody. And before we dive too far down the road, I want to make sure we bring on our good friend Joe so we could talk about the latest and greatest in the news. Well, hello, Mr. Joe Varnador.
Well, good morning. How are you, sir?
Always good. Always good.
Very, very good. So actually today we are going to forego the news that I'm doing, and we're going to go ahead and bring Eddie, Mr. Eddie Speed, our fearless leader and chief visionary, and Mr. Bob Repass, our managing director, on today. And Bob and Eddie are going to take us through the process of the latest from the latest Black Knight report. So let's go ahead and bring Eddie and Bob on. How are you guys?
How are you?
I am wonderful. It's good to see you guys. You guys look all bright and just ready for the 4th of July, man.
Oh, we are. We're getting ready for some fireworks.
Very good. So,
well, I allude to this in the show quite often, that I have an expert team behind me that really help us pull together data and facts. And Bob leads that team. Joe, you help him with it. We even have our friend Kevin that helps us with it along the way. I have a lot of people that contribute, and thank all of you guys for that. But this report was so important that I didn't want to miss anything. And so I asked Bob, who has intimately studied this information, to really come on today. And he's just going to open up the report and scroll through it. It's a download. You guys can easily access it and look at it later. But Bob, I'm going to let you sort of take it away, and I'll just kind of ride on the bus with you. How about that?
All right, that sounds good. We'll scroll through this, and as Eddie said, this PDF will be available. I'm not going to cover every page of it, but I'm going to hit some highlights of it, and then we'll kind of banter back and forth on what we think it means to the market today and upcoming.
So what is the report?
This is the Black Knight Mortgage Monitor. It comes out every month. The latest one, which covers both the delinquency and the housing pricing and affordability, is as of April. So this is the latest report that we're going to go over. And as you can see, Eddie, this is going to cover several things. We're going to talk about some forbearance. Let me kind of click here, and we're going to talk about a little forbearance, and we're going to talk about home prices and their affordability and how that impacts non-performing loans, and also how it impacts the selling of homes and how that impacts the affordability of the homes that are being sold or the lack of the homes that are being sold, the inventory crisis that we're having.
So this is probably the best information that is current
Right.
about what we call shadow inventory.
That's a great
Right.
way to put it, the
Yeah.
shadow inventory piece. So why don't we dive right in here? And on the surface, it looks like everything's moving in the right direction. It talks about how delinquency rates are declining 7%. Interesting as far as the prepayment activity, it was at the lowest amount since May of last year. And that's basically because of the lack of refis, right? So there aren't any prepayments. People aren't refinancing their loans like they were in the past. But what I found interesting on this is even though it talks about delinquency going down, the number of loans 90 days or more past due. Okay, so these are loans that haven't made a payment in over 90 days. While it did decrease 151,000 loans, there are still 4 times as many of those loans that are in serious delinquency than when the pandemic started last March.
Wow.
So that's 4 times as many.
So these loans seriously delinquent loans, 151,000 loans, are far from the pile.
Right. Those are the ones that they quote unquote cured. But even after they cured 151,000, let's take a look at how many are still falling in that bucket. As of the end of, let me highlight this for everybody. As of the end of April, there are still 1.8 million such delinquent loans. Okay, so that's 1.8, and that is 1.3 more than there was prior to the pandemic. So everybody talks about what is the waterfall of non-performing loans going to look like? When are they going to hit the market? And we're going to talk about what maybe some of those hurdles that'll slow down that waterfall when we get towards the end. But right now, there's almost 2 million loans that are seriously delinquent. And by seriously delinquent, they're talking about loans that are 90 days delinquent. Okay. And it talks about it right here. I think this is an interesting point. Forbearance plans are fixing to expire, and that is going to be the tipping point. Will people return to making payments, or will they have to default and not get a workout resolution and go down the non-performing foreclosure path?
And Bob, this is the ... You and I go to these high-level masterminds and stuff, and people say real estate's on fire and people are paying over the market. All true, 100% true. But this is the ... that we feel like a lot of the market has not focused on.
Right. And we'll see when we get into the home pricing, how everybody's kind of getting drunk on the inflation, how prices are on fire and everything's just appreciating. And we'll talk about how that impacts some of the equity positions that some of these non-performing loans have. Let's see what else we got here. As I mentioned earlier, there were some loans that were cured in April. Right, these are loans that came out of the forbearance plans. But right now, even though April looked pretty solid, I want to talk about how that impacts certain markets. And it's not going to be surprising as far as how it impacted both positively and negatively. Because if you look right up here,
Oops, you'll need to put your draw on. Yeah.
If you look right here, the top 4 markets in delinquency are the ones that rely heavily on tourism, right? You've got Vegas, Miami, New Orleans, and Orlando. Okay. On the flip side of that, if you look at that bottom chart, tech-centric markets have very little in delinquency, right? You look at San Jose, San Francisco, Seattle, even though those markets, so to speak, are on fire with real estate values, right? The performance of the borrowers is outperforming a lot of the heavily tourist type areas because they still haven't rebounded from the pandemic completely.
So if you're a real estate investor and you're looking at strategies, chasing either burnout landlords or people that have been delinquent on their mortgage to go essentially buy their house, those markets are going to react very differently depending on what's been affected by tourism, etc.
Exactly. So when you get to the hospitality and the tourism heavy markets, as you can see here, those are the ones that you're going to focus on. And Eddie, this chart over here on this side, talks about, let me get the darker the color here.
Yeah.
That shows you where the serious delinquency has increased
That's
as
our
far as-
state.
It is. That's why I circled that, right? Let everybody know where we are. Right? It increased 3% just month over month last month. So we'll keep an eye on that as we go. We've talked about this previously. I know you covered it usually on a monthly basis as far as what does it look like as far as active forbearance plans, right? There are still just over 2 million loans that are in active forbearance
Today.
Well, as of this report, which this report, even though it was done through April, they reported through May 18th, right? That there are still 2.1 million loans that are in active forbearance. Now, the interesting part that I found on this one, Eddie, is this graph shows on this side when forbearance plans are scheduled to expire. Okay, so they could have either been in there for 12 months or 18 months. So when do they expire? This right here is June. So you can see a lot of them expire right there in June, right? And then that's followed by July and August. So you can see that 65% of the forbearance plans are set to expire over the next 90 days.
It's coming.
So that means what happens? Well, you exit your forbearance plan, you've got several options, right? You can resume making your payments. And at that point, you'll just tack on the payments you missed to the back end of your loan, or you go through a loan modification process. And then if you can't qualify for a loan modification process, what they're going to recommend you do is sell your property, or else you're going to end up going through the foreclosure process.
So a little bit of background, Bob, prior to being our managing director for the last, I think, 8 years, he was at Bayview, and he ran a big loan servicing shop for them, and through after 2008, it was a modification shop, right? I mean, that's what you guys specialize in is doing modifications and fixing these loans and servicing these loans. So you have a ton of experience in understanding these guys that are running the servicing shops, what they're facing.
Yeah, back then they came out with the Home Affordable Modification Program, or HAMP as they referred to it.
Yeah.
And we did a ton of those HAMP loans, right? And there was a long qualifying process as far as provide your tax returns, provide your pay stubs, how do you qualify? I think this time around they're going to try to streamline that, at least initially, to try to get through. The hardships aren't quite as bad, but they were pandemic related as opposed to market related. So I think we're going to see a little bit of movement on that as well.
But we're not going to see every loan that's in forbearance modified.
No, absolutely not. To that point, as I switch back to my highlighter here, getting the hang of this. Okay. Over the last 30 days, of the 168,000 that have left forbearance, they are still not in loss mitigation. 110,000. Okay. So if you look, where that comes is right up in, I'm going to learn this thing. That comes right up into this point here. Okay. The ones that 2% of them that have been removed or expired are delinquent. Okay. This is the waterfall that we talked about. These are the ones that are going to hit the foreclosure bucket first, right? They were already delinquent. They were relieved during the pandemic through the forbearance plan. But as you can see here, as of May 18th, 7.2 million people have been in some form of the forbearance plan since March. This breaks down. 46% of them right here shows they're already back performing. Right? So we're focusing on this bucket where either the term was extended or they're in active loss mit and delinquent. Interesting enough, there was a small percentage that paid off.
190,000 loans of 7 million.
Right. And that means they either refied or they actually sold their property and maybe downsized on that piece there.
And so, Bob, what we think this is proof of is that a lot of people that have been delinquent on their mortgage haven't listed their property and sold it.
Correct.
That's why we say it's shadow inventory.
Well, it's an affordability issue too, because even if they sell their house, Eddie, where are they going to go? Because pricing is getting so high. Even the rental prices are going up. So if they can't afford their mortgage that they're in, they can sell their property to pay off their mortgage, but where are they going to go live? Right? So it's kind of that catch-22 situation. An interesting point here before we move to the next slide is out of the 2.18 that remain, 90% of those, right, are having their plans extended. They're trying to keep kicking the can down the road, right? They want to stay in there as long as they can. Talk a little bit about some of the equity positions that they have. And this chart over here kind of shows you the difference between what they refer to as agency prime. That's going to be Fannie and Freddie loans. Okay, those are the ones that had Fannie and Freddie. This bucket here, which we call the Ginnie Mae, that's FHA and VA. All right. This looks at what has less than 10% equity in their property. And the interesting part of it, Eddie, if you look, it shows that you have 6% here. But then when you start adding in the months that have been deferred, that's going to eat into that person's equity, right?
It increases the legal balance owed.
Correct. So all of a sudden, 6% had less than 10%. Now 23% have less than 10% equity, just because during that forbearance plan, they didn't have to make payments. But that didn't mean they were forgiven. That just means they were accumulating on top of there. So right now, that's how much equity they lost on those FHA and VA. And remember, most of those probably had 3% to start with.
And FHA and VA, particularly FHA, is where, as a percentage of default or delinquency or forbearance, that's the blood, right? I mean, Fannie is not the blood in this case. The big problem has been the FHA product.
Correct. And this shows you right here that almost a quarter, that 23% we talked about, have less than 10% equity, right? And we've talked over the last several months that, you know, this cycle is going to be different than 08, 09 due to the fact that there's not as many underwater properties.
A lot of delinquent notes have plenty of equity.
Right. But this is showing that some of that equity is getting eaten up through the forbearance process by tacking on those delinquent payments there. So we're going to keep an eye on that again to see how many of those get pushed down off of the bank's balance sheets through NPL sales as opposed to going through the foreclosure process.
So, Bob, do you think it's because FHA has lighter underwriting? Why has the FHA product been so much more subject to problems than Fannie Mae product?
Well, yeah, two things. One, typically there's less skin in the game. They don't require much of a down payment. And they do have a lower bar as far as a credit score in order to get that. Whereas the typical credit score for a Fannie Freddie may be 740. If you're in the mid 600, 650 to 680, you can get an FHA loan. And instead of putting 20% down, you can put 3 to 5% down.
And is it more likely that a service person or somebody in hospitality has an FHA loan than a Fannie loan?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And you're going to see that in a lot of those markets we talked about earlier, as far as the Vegas, the New Orleans, the Orlando markets, very heavy in the FHA product.
It's kind of been a proven fact that a lot of executives haven't suffered from the virus. It's been more people that, you know, have gotten laid off because they just their business just didn't need them.
Right. A lot of the service workers.
Yeah.
And again, a lot of the service workers have not returned to work because of the enhanced unemployment benefits. Right. Almost to the point where you can make more money not going back to work. There's the whole debate on minimum wage. What should it be? You know, should we increase it to $15? Well, it's still, if I'm only making 10, I can make more on unemployment. So as of today, I believe 23 states have stopped taking federal enhanced benefits and just said, no, we're going to make people go back to work. And you're seeing some of that increase. I go around all the time. I'll go to restaurants, I'll go to stores, and there's all kinds of now hiring signs.
Exactly.
All over the windows, you know, and you feel bad. These people have struggled throughout the pandemic to keep their small business open. Now everybody's coming back to their business and they can't serve them because they don't have the staff.
I can't tell you how many times that we see vacant tables at a restaurant or something, and they can't seat us because they don't have the wait staff.
Right. And it's amazing. And again, I feel for the small business owners. All right, let's talk a little bit about what we like to say, the real estate is on fire. Right. We're going to talk a little bit now about the home price and affordability. Take a look at this part right here, Eddie. 17 consecutive months of home price increases.
Boom.
Right? That's a pretty steady trajectory there. According to this report, the home price index in April was the highest growth rate on record. Okay, so they started counting this in the mid-1990s. In the month of April, let's see, in the month of April, it increased 14.8%. That is the highest since they started tracking it. Okay?
Wow.
Now, even single family was higher than that. 15.6% of single families. In 1 month, there was an increase.
Golly.
All right. The condos was a little bit less, and that's what kind of drug it down a little bit to an average of 14.8. So 17 consecutive months. So you would think, as this country is under a pandemic and the economy, people being laid off work or whatever, what's that going to do to real estate? It's completely opposite. It's just been a steady growth over that 17-month period.
You know, Bob, we've used the analogy of the iceberg effect, right? And what we've seen so far is every evidence of things above the water, right? Where it's just real estate's on fire and real estate is good. We've been watching this expiration of the moratorium on foreclosures, and now we're right at that deadline.
Yep.
And so it's going to be very interesting to see what the real market is after, you know, the mortgage companies and landlords are taking action to go protect their interest of people that aren't able to pay.
All right, Eddie, where are the markets that are on fire? Well, basically, you can say all states west of the Rocky Mountains, with Arizona leading the way, over 20% growth year over year.
Wow.
Right? So you can see right there, Arizona's at 23.
Yeah.
Right? Washington's over 20, even the great state of Montana. You think Boise, Idaho at 33.9% is carrying the way in Idaho? Huh? Look at that. That's just, it's amazing. But in the great state of Texas, you still see Austin, Texas is on top up here as far as the growth. And interesting enough, even the 50th out of 50 metro markets, Pittsburgh is still up 8%.
It's the lowest of the low, yet it's still up.
Still up 8%. Yeah.
Wow.
So I mean, that's crazy. So you know, you can only say so much, but the real estate continues to be on fire. One last thing, as we kind of wrap this up, anything in your neighborhood selling for over list price?
I think it is. That's what I hear.
So, I mean, this just shows you as far as the inventory of homes that are listed for sale. What changes the inventory as far as how much more house you could buy based on your income? And then the growth rate that we were talking about, as you can see right here. This I found interesting. Will it continue? Based on the payment affordability, even if interest rates remain low over the next 18 months, the home price growth is not sustainable. And
because people can't afford it.
That's exactly right. And that's what we're going to run into is you cannot afford to stay where you're at. So what is that going to do to the house appreciation? Is that going to stabilize them? And where is it? Is it going to stabilize or is it going to start coming down? That's always the thing. Do you sell now? Do you wait till the market peaks? I mean, you know, I've talked about selling my property, but where would I go?
Exactly.
I take all my equity out. Then what am I going to do? I got to go find somewhere else. So
Bob and I are both in the 60 range, and same thing. We have a lot of equity in our house, live in executive homes, and all of a sudden, if you sell it, well, Martha, what are we going to do? Go live in an apartment? You know?
Exactly. All right, so we're going to bring Joe on here in just a minute, but I wanted to show everybody you can download this PDF report. At the end of it, it does give you a breakdown of all the numbers that we talked about in some of those charts here, and it gets pretty specific. One thing that I like here is it goes all the way back to you can measure where they were back in 2005 all the way through April of this year, and it kind of tells you how the trends go there. So
Great.
I believe if I give that back right there.
Yep, I think we'll stop sharing our screen, and then we'll bring Joe on. Joe, how are you, sir?
I am doing very well, guys. It is, you know, the stats are what they are, and you know, as you said, real estate is on fire, and there's that top piece, and then there's the underbelly with everything else that's going on there. So it's certainly, as the Chinese philosopher said, may you live in interesting times. So these are certainly interesting times, right?
I'd say that's 1,000% true.
And, you know, as Darren Bloomquist from auction.com said last week, he said, we're in this for the next 2, maybe 3 years. He said it'll be into 2024, as it's continues to clean up. So we've got a little ways to go.
Well, it's interesting. Darren had called me a few weeks ago and really was asking us about this side, the delinquent notes, and how we kind of saw things, because we know each other from way back, and
right.
And this foreclosure moratorium and an eviction moratorium, I believe, is going to be a telltale sign of really how stable this escalating market is.
Right.
So there's been a couple of updated articles, like literally within the last week. And Joe, you've got a slide deck, and I want you and Bob to talk about that a little bit, because this is even updating from this incredible, great report. Thank you, Black Knight, by the way. This report was a killer good one.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So can you guys see the latest since the report?
Absolutely, Joe. So
okay, very good. I can't see myself, so you know how that goes, Bob.
We're getting used to it, Joe. We can see you. That's good.
Right, there you go. So here we go. Bob, why don't you talk through this?
All right. So as Eddie and I went through that report, it was as of April, and there were several things that were also kind of referred back to maybe mid-May statistics. But for those of you that pay attention on what comes across the headlines, there's been quite a few CFPB rulings as far as foreclosure and eviction moratoriums. At first, they were scheduled to end on June 30th, which is today. And then some of them have been extended an additional 30 days through the end of July.
Right.
So, Bob, a couple of questions. Who is CFPB, and why does that matter?
I'll answer the first part first. Consumer Finance Protection Bureau. This was created through the Dodd-Frank 08-09 law. Put this in effect, and obviously there's been a lot of pros and cons through the Obama era, the Trump era, and now the Biden era, as far as the director of the CFPB and what they focused on, whether it was really consumer protection or whether it was going after the big banks and fining them and penalizing them for maybe not being as disclosure oriented as the government felt they should be. It is important that it is cycling back through with this administration that the consumer protections are going to be at the forefront, which is going to affect the mortgage servicers and how they go about proceeding with foreclosures and what they have to do before they're able to refer a loan to foreclosure. So before referring a loan to foreclosure, CFPB just came out with a ruling basically giving them 3 things. That one, they're going to have to resume making regular payments. And this means that not that the payments you missed were forgiven. They're just going to be tacked on to the end. Okay. So if you skip 12 payments, you just start making your payment, pick right back up where you were, but they're going to tack those 12 you missed on the back end of your mortgage. Or they're coming out with a streamlined modification program, so it won't be as encumbering as the HAMP program we talked about earlier. And that means we're either going to extend your loan term. So let's say you had a 30-year loan, you paid on it 5 years, you have 25 years left. They may extend it out to 30 again, or they may take it all the way out to 40 years. Or they'll lower your interest rate, which is going to be tough because there's a lot of loans in the low interest rate environment. How much relief are you going to get, Joe, when you reduce your rate from 3 to 2.5?
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Or they're going to work with you to sell your home to the point we talked about earlier that this isn't a short sale environment because of the equity positions that a lot of folks have, right? So they're going to be able to sell their house, get some equity out, pay off their loan, hopefully take that equity and move on to the next stage of their life. So when is it okay to foreclose per the new rulings here? Right now, if the property has already been abandoned, it can be foreclosed. And this is a huge lesson I think they learned from the last time, Eddie. Remember when we talked about how the city municipalities were really struggling because of all the vacant and zombie properties?
Exactly.
Well, what happens? How were the revenues? They weren't making any revenue.
Right.
Yeah.
Nobody's paying taxes, the water liens, the trash bills, all that. So now they're going to cut to the chase. And if it's a vacant, abandoned property, you can proceed with foreclosure immediately. Also, as we looked at that report, as far as some of the loans that were delinquent even prior to the pandemic.
1.5% of mortgages were delinquent prior to the pandemic.
Right. So those, you're 120 days past due March 1st of 2020. You can automatically be foreclosed on now. And now, if you're 120 days and you've been in a forbearance fund, or even if you haven't been in one, the servicers have 90 days to reach out to you. We call that borrower outreach, right? They'll make calls, they'll send you a letter, whatever, saying, hey, we can work with you. If a borrower is non-responsive for 90 days, they can be referred to foreclosure. And then if they evaluate you for a mod, you don't qualify based on your income, maybe your spouse lost their job, maybe you got divorced, and you can't qualify for anything else, then this is the waterfall that would happen.
So these modifications are going to require, you're going to have to qualify.
Yeah, I mean, just because they say streamline, that comes along the way of like what paperwork. You're going to have to provide some either affidavit of hardship or some proof of income and say, okay, based on your income now, you can afford X.
Got it.
And whatever X is, if that can work out a mod by extending the term or lowering the rate, they'll work with you. But if you're at a point where you really can't do it, you need to sell your house. And that's where you go. So, Joe, that's kind of what I saw. One thing that came across the headlines yesterday, Joe, I don't know if you saw this, but I just wanted to kind of mention it. The Supreme Court ruled that the CBC eviction moratorium could stay in place. Now, just to put that in perspective, because again, Joe, believe it or not, I know it's not you, but some people just read the headline.
That's right.
Right? And when I saw the headline, I was like, what? Right? But the deal was, when the Biden administration extended it to the end of July, so that's 30 days.
Right.
The Supreme Court ruled that would be okay. They would allow that. But if you read the ruling, Judge Kavanaugh even wrote, even though the moratorium is unconstitutional, we see no reason why it shouldn't be extended for 30 days. So in other words, we're not going to extend it forever, but the leash is too short right now to do anything about it. So we'll let it stay till July, but we don't see extending it any further. So we'll keep our eye on that. Things can change.
More to come on that, right?
That's a fairly significant statement to say it's unconstitutional, though.
Right, but you only get that when you read the article.
Right.
It's not in the headline. It didn't say CDC moratorium is unconstitutional. It just said can stay in place, stay in effect.
All
Man,
right.
Joe, what a lot of data, huh?
You know what? This is what folks need to know and need to understand. And hey, that's what we do here at Note School, right? We, because of what you do, Eddie, and being the visionary, and Bob, you do what you do is that allows us to stay in the forefront and keep you guys informed. And that's what we do on a daily basis. So yeah, it's good stuff. Again, we'll see how it plays out here over the next few months, but the things are going to start happening now, right? So,
well, this was great, Bob. Awesome job.
Yeah.
Really, really great book review, so to speak, of the report. And I'm glad you guys added those two. Those are downloads as well. And those two articles that you guys made reference to, you've included those because obviously this is just something that's just come out.
Right. There's a article from DS News, which talked about what CFP rulings came out, and there was another one from Forbes. So both of those articles, there'll be links to those available, along with a link to the PDF of the Black Knight report.
Very good.
All right. Well, you going to stay around a little bit for the after party?
Oh, yeah. I'm usually just watching the after party, but now I actually get to take place. So, yeah, I might as well.
So, guys, let's. We're going to bring Brian back on, and Brian is going to talk about our sponsor and Feeding Frenzy Friday.
Hey guys, yeah, we are absolutely going to talk a little bit about that. NoteSchool is sponsored by Notes Direct and Feeding Frenzy Friday, and each week there's a YouTube playlist called Feeding Frenzy Friday where we take a note from Notes Direct and we break it down to really help you better understand what it is that you're even looking at and try to help you with those steps to master your level of due diligence. Master that skill set to give you the confidence to go and click that buy button so you can buy an asset as easy as you could buy basically anything online, right? And so you got to take those steps. You got to build that education. And so it's a great way to learn a little bit more. So go check out that playlist. Support Feeding Frenzy Friday as well as Notes Direct to learn a little bit more. We can continue the conversation here in the after party. So before we jump to that, though, let me say a couple things. Number one, if you've got your questions, go ahead and start putting your questions in. We'll talk about them in the after party. And if this is something that you think is really valuable, maybe you have friends that are real estate investors. Maybe you have friends that are real estate agents. Maybe you have people who are wanting to say, hey, I think now's a good time to start being a real estate investor. You should take this video and you should share it with them. There's typically a share button. You can grab that link. You can text it out, email it out, that kind of stuff. Share it with your friends, your family, and kind of spread the word. This is really quality content, great data to help people make decisions and ultimately keep us out of trouble, help us to remain profitable in our businesses. And so, as always, we're going to keep it going. If this is a video that you thought was awesome, would you just stop for a second and give it a like real quick on Facebook? It would mean a lot to us, as well as really encourage us to continue with this level of content. And definitely subscribe to the channel so that you're making sure to stay on top of the latest information that we're pushing out, because as soon as it comes out, we're probably going to start talking about it. And if you want the latest and greatest, the absolute most up-to-date stuff, you got to be watching NoteSchool TV. So click that bell notification so that you are alerted for 11:05 Central Time every single Wednesday to join us here on NoteSchool TV. If you're somebody who's just one of those people that says, yeah, I love what you're saying, Bob said something that I got to ask this question. Well, stick around for the after party. And if for some reason we don't answer it, we are going to be catching up with all the comments in YouTube and Facebook, and we'll make sure to get those answered. And if it's just this burning desire, you can't wait for your answer, reach out to us at noteschool.com. There's a tab that says contact us, and just simply click it, put your information in, we'll reach right back out to you. We'll make sure we get you going in the right direction. Thanks everybody for joining us this week on NoteSchool TV. If you can stick around for the after party, we'll plan on seeing you on the other side. If you can't, have a great weekend, and we'll catch you next Wednesday. All right. Well, we are back here in the after party. Let me bring my friends in. How we doing? All right. And I see people all over. It's amazing. I'm seeing Chicago now. We've got Peggy from Colorado. It's Edwin's birthday, apparently. It must have been somewhere there's so many comments. I'm trying to catch up. So happy birthday, Edwin. Really glad you're joining the show. That's super cool. We got people from, I would say, the majority of states, it seems like. Nobody from Mississippi except you, though, Eddie.
No Mississippians that I see, but I bet they're going to start joining and typing in that hello.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow,
absolutely.
We have got a big crowd today, guys.
We do. You guys told him that Bob was going to bring it today, and he did, right?
That's true.
Well, there you go.
Huntsville,
Bob, Alabama.
No kidding. Bob, I think it's, these next 3 months, call it these next 5 months, we're going to really get more of a sense of the global market. To this point, the residential market has been pretty much a shortage of listings, a FOMO, fear of missing out, people buying properties. Now, all of a sudden, we're going to go get to see a little more of this, of the how stable the market is when we add in these other variables, because what you're describing to us sounds like we're going to see a lot of properties that are going to get moved into a status that they've got to move forward and start putting them on the market or selling them or whatever it is got to happen.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think it's going to be similar in some regards to the last cycle, to where it will be market centric. There'll be certain markets that can outgrow this, right? Whether it be just based on the economy getting back, and will certain markets that maybe didn't spike as much. Let's take Pittsburgh, right? 50 out of 50, right? Last place, but it was still up 8%.
Yeah.
Well, when you're flat like that, which historically, except it hasn't been that way in the last few months here in Dallas, but historically Dallas has been pretty flat. We weathered the whole 08, 09 cycle as far as property values here in Dallas pretty well. But Vegas, Seattle, Phoenix, all those that were just on fire, well, all of a sudden, when you get that based on an economy that is centric to hospitality and tourism, that could be something like you're going to see some real action in those type markets.
That's a great point.
So I think you're going to see that. We're going to keep around that. I agree with over the next 4, 5, 6 months. Let's just say the second half of this year, we're going to actually see a lot of the, which ones are going to be able to maintain and stabilize and which ones aren't. And the banks are going to say, I want to get this off my balance sheet before the end of the year. What I'm really excited about, Eddie, is that Note Expo is the beginning of November, right? And everybody says, well, what are you going to talk about? What are you going to talk about? Well, it's kind of hard right now to really put the firm topics up there because who knows what's going to happen. But I can tell you at the beginning of November, it will be the latest of what's going on in the market. And there will be some major players there to tell you what they have taken advantage of in the second half of 2021 and what they're looking forward to in 2022. We spent some time with some of those folks last week at a mastermind and just kind of talking through what they envision coming down the pike. And there were some very interesting, forecasts.
Yeah, there's no doubt the legacy loans, the loans that were delinquent before the virus.
Right.
In fact, Brian, you just bought one of those loans last week.
Yeah, I did. It was a non-performing note that we decided to go ahead and buy from Notes Direct, our sponsor, actually.
Yeah,
and Feeding Frenzy Friday.
That's right. That's right.
Well, and you guys know too that was it May 13th, Bob? May 13th, Bob, right before Summer Summit. Was it? I think it was Fannie. Was it Fannie or it was Fannie that announced the first sale of non-performing assets? It was about 8,000 loans that they were going to start moving through the system as well. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
Real quick, I don't want to gloss over the fact that Brian did just buy a non-performing loan. Okay, so he has taken what he hears on some of these and what he's, in the trenches day in and day out. Yeah. And I can tell you, without giving away too much on Brian, it was not in Brian's backyard. Okay, so he bought a non-performing loan that was not in the Dallas area. Right. And he has strategies that he's got in mind on how to work this out, and he sees a market opportunity. So we're not just out here, bringing you the latest updates, but we're taking the information we have and seeing how we can use that strategy to put it in our capital fund, into our personal portfolios, and how we can help folks take it to their portfolios as well.
Right.
And I will add to that and say that I didn't even get special access. I gave everyone 7 days to watch Feeding Frenzy and go buy it if they wanted to. Apparently nobody listens to me, and so I said, fine, I'll go buy it.
Didn't you pay about 80 grand for this asset?
Yeah, 79 grand, had a BPO at 240,000. So there's some room in it.
So a market value of the property of 240,000, and you bought a first mortgage for 79.
Yeah.
Well, that's skinny, Brian, but I think it may work out for you.
Well,
I got a little bit of room.
I want to see the case study. When he's finished, we're going to have Brian come on and do a case study on exactly what happened on that. Right.
All right. That sounds like a plan. That'll be a good one. Well, as in essence of time here, I want to just address one more thing. There was a question about how do I get access to this PDF, Bob? And so I want everybody to know, if you're watching on YouTube or on Facebook, it's in the comment. There's a link to be able to download this PDF. If you're also on YouTube, you can see it in the YouTube description. It's the link you see on the screen. I don't expect you to memorize it. Again, go to the comments and simply click the link. If it's not clickable, just grab it and go paste it into a browser. You'll have access to it. And then you can spend some time really digging into it And then when we're talking about it again, bring your questions. Come participate in NoteSchool TV every Wednesday, as always, at 11:05. And so thanks, everybody, for jumping in today, saying hi, and kind of hanging out with us. It's always nice to have Eddie and Bob with us. Joe, it's always good to be around you, obviously, as well. Always a fan. And so for everybody, have a great weekend. If you're trying to figure out where do we go from here, if you're brand new, I can't encourage you enough. Go to noteschool.com/TV to figure out what that next step needs to look like for you. We'd love to help you kind of figure out how to get the ball rolling. Or if you're already a note buyer, how can we take it to the next level? So we'll catch you guys next week on NoteSchool TV. Have a great weekend. We'll see you guys on the other side.
See you guys.
Bye-bye.